right, so we're going to be on to the fretting process here of the OM. This is a Tech Guitar Works fret bender. Just getting this set up. I'm not going to bother trying to explain how to set this one up because yours may not match what I have. Yeah, that's not enough either. So I like to bend them just slightly over what the radius calls for. So I'm going for a 16th radius, so that's probably closer to 12. I've been puzzling about the 16-inch radius too. I don't know why acoustic guitars, seems like everybody builds them with flatter radiuses. 16 is probably the roundest for an acoustic. I'm thinking, like, why couldn't you do a 12-inch radius on an acoustic? I mean, you like playing electric guitars. Shouldn't talk off camera. Anyway, why would it be so weird to have a 12-inch radius? I might just do that because I know what I like. I don't know if I'd go to a 10. I do like 10s, 9.5, 10. I'm cleaning the fret wire. I don't know if you're aware of that over there. I just have naphtha or lighter fluid, and I am just cleaning the tang on this wire so that there isn't any oil on it if I decide to put some glue in there. And I don't glue frets in just like white glue, or like Type Bond or even fish glue, just for the sake of gluing them in. I'll put them in, and then I'll kind of weld the ends with some super glue. So this is now sanded out to the 600. It just looks really nice. I don't think that under the oil you can tell the difference, but at this stage of the game, it just looks nice. Feels good, all that stuff. I have a pair of fret nippers that are just basically, regular old end nipper type pliers, but I ground one edge finer than the other. So I usually rough cut everything with the fat edge and then come back in and trim with the finer edge. However, I bought these somewhere, and they say fast cap on them. If anybody knows who carries these, they were advertised as good for stainless steel, and they have a very fine jaw on them, and they cut pretty good, except now that the jaw is so chewed up that they don't just snap them right off. Sometimes you kind of got to finagle it a bit. Anyway, I've been using these to do the finish trimming after they're in, but I use the other big pair there for when I'm roughing out. Okay, I got my little block here that I use to stick my frets in as I nip them. They're just holes and numbered. And there's quite a few people now selling these things. Not this exact thing. I just did it in the side of a homemade fret rocker, or not fret rocker, I'm sorry, a homemade neck cradle that I made. And I went ahead and drilled holes in it. But you can buy them from several outlets, pre-drilled. Because if you can build guitars, it's not likely that you can drill a bunch of holes in a block of wood. So you make sure you get the ones that are all pre-made and have a fancy CNC label engraved into them. I like to start on the back because these are longer, and when you get up farther, it's narrower. And that way, if you kind of get in a bind and the one you're cutting on doesn't have enough to do one right next to you, you can go up to the other end of the neck. Usually. Did I mention this was cryo wire? I've been using that. I've talked often about the guy that I scored a bunch of stuff from, acoustic guitar wise, and he had a pound of the cryo wire and a pound of the, I think like the 148. No, it's not 148. Anyway, some other StMac wire. Just the standard wire. And I acquired those from him as well. I'm going to nip the ends off of these frets in order to be able to fill the slot coming off the side of the fretboard, which will make it pretty much look like it was bound. You won't see the little T part of this thing sticking down into the fretboard like you do on so many classic guitars. Turn my cutter over. This is a really great tool, the StewMac fret nipper. This is their newest, I think it's their newest version. I was able to get it on sale, and it cost me, it cost me a lot in StewMac dollars. But it was on sale, so it didn't cost me as much. All right, so we moved over to the fret press. You have a nice fat block of maple under this neck, kind of making up for the difference in the thickness of the neck itself. Just depends. So I've got lots of wood around the shop. I like to get it where the handle is where I can push down on the handle to set the fret, right? And you can see in the frame here is my block that has all my stuff in it, my frets. I'm going to take the neck down, put it over here, kind of out on the end of my Moxon device because I've congested right here. And just get the fret started, just tap it in on either end and press it in. And I just always check both ends to make sure that I'm not going to have any exposed tang when I get there. Oops. Well, I'll say oops, but nothing really happened. So right now I have a 12-inch radius caul in the press, and that's going to seat the outside edges and some of the center. But this is a 16-inch radius. There we go. And that actually almost, I'll see if I can get that in the camera, almost seats the fret completely. Let's see. Yeah, I don't think you can tell in the camera, but the center isn't quite down. I could slide a 5/1000 feeler gauge. So once I do all of these at the 12-inch, I'll change the caul out, and I'll put in this 16-inch radius caul, and that will push the centers and the ends. It should fit perfectly. So let's do a few more of these. I'm going to nip that one a little bit. I didn't bring my nipper here. All right, I'm just going to finish the rest of this off, and then put the 16-inch caul in and flatten them all out, and then we'll check them with the rocker and bang on any ones that might be a little high. Usually I have really good success in these with the press, that everything is pretty even. Okay, we got all the frets in. We're going to go ahead and nip these things right flush with the end, or the edge rather, of the board. These are those fast cap nippers I mentioned earlier. I don't know where I got them, I'm sure they said they were good for stainless, but they're all chewed up. So I need to get on my computer and look this up specifically, see what I can find, who might be a dealer, where I could have possibly, I thought I got them from StewMac, actually, but I don't see them on their site any longer. Or I couldn't find them in my purchase history either, so I'm guessing I didn't get them there. All right, so just in the last scene, I nipped these off. I haven't filed them. I haven't done anything to them. I've just turned it up on edge, put some tape here just so that I don't get a lot of super glue seeping out onto the mahogany and staining that. I don't know if it's in camera. Nope. I just stuck a little piece of 80 grit down on my table over here, and I just sanded some ebony. Got some dust. So what I'm doing is I'm filling the fret ends and welding the fret ends down all in the same step. So I'm just going to put a little of this 1 gauge. Did I say ebony earlier? I think I did. I meant to say ebony, of course. I mean 1 gauge. See, I can't even say it when I want to say it. All right, so I just get some on here. Go ahead and roll that in. Kind of force it down in the slot a little bit. You can leave a little up on top, proud. And then you would just come back with your thin super glue and just put a drop on there. Bang. And that's going to wick down in that crevice or slot. And after a while, if it doesn't wick down, I just come back in and dab it so it doesn't run all over the place. I may have had some run down the fretboard. Oh, you know what I forgot to do? I normally wax the fretboard before I do this, just in case any does run over it. So I failed to do that. And so I do have super glue running down here. Okay. There's my acetone. My little squirty bottle of acetone. And that will take this stuff off pretty readily. Like I say, I like to wax the fretboard, which I'm going to turn around and do right now, so that I don't, you can usually pop the glue right off the top of the wax. Now you don't want to wax across the frets because that will force wax underneath the crown of the fret. And you don't necessarily want to do that. You just want to run wax to the crown on the board, and just to keep the glue from sticking to the board. Now you are primarily dealing with the tang. We're not trying to glue the crown down necessarily, but if a little glue gets in there and glues the crown down, it's no harm. And so I'm going to do the next two. Get a little bit of dust on my knife. And you don't have to have this kind of little palette knife thing. I use them for separating. Got a little shiny thing in there. Got another one right there. What is that? Ah. Probably won't necessarily get all these filled the first time around, so then you just take a second go at it. But like I said, if you pile it up a little proud, then you can then you just file it all off. So while you're filing your fret ends, you are filing your ebony, wenge off. Got stuck on ebony somehow. All right, that one was soaked in pretty good. This one here, oh, and it's a little shy. This one there, so a little bit more for Santa Claus. We got some magic dust going on here. Okay, see if that does it. And since I've got it right here, shoot a little accelerator on that. All right, I'm going to move on down the line, and you don't want to see that. Okay, so I don't have any close-up on this. So I peeled the tape off. You can see it, hopefully you can see all the gunk on the side of the fretboard here. So I'm just going to level these off. And because of the tangs being cut off, I could nip them sideways this way, flush, so you don't have a lot of things sticking out. When you nip them this way, you end up with a point hanging out, and they vary, and getting started is kind of tricky. So you can see now, if my file was flat, oh, I'm using the wrong file. If my file was flat, it would be like that. So I'm just a little bit of a tip on it, not much, but I just want to get these things down to the edge of the fretboard. So I'm not putting any real taper on this, and maybe 10 degrees or something. And you can see now I'm down to the edge of the fretboard, mostly. You can feel it when it's at the edge of the fretboard because it starts cutting differently. Basically, it doesn't cut. Okay. So now I'm going to go flat, try just to get the stuff right off of the actual fretboard, the extra Wenge filler and all that. And okay, I'm going to use a sanding block because the file's not cutting it. That was funny. I'm cutting it. All right, so now again, once again, flat on the side of the neck. So we got all that cleaned up now. That didn't take long at all, did it? And I am going to roll that a little bit. I like the edge of my fingerboard rolled a little bit. 80 grit makes pretty quick work of that. So we're done with that. Now, if we want to put a bevel in that, file actually is finer than the sandpaper here. Sandpaper knocks it off a little more even. I'm looking at it from the top, and I want a little bit more bevel on those. Okay, I like that. By the time I get those rounded over a little bit, they'll be styling. This is very roughed in. I went across the whole thing with the fret rocker and tapped as necessary. Everything's pretty level. I got a few here and there. I will just go ahead and level the board. And then once I have it on the guitar, I'm going to have to re-level it because this is not going to... I'm going to clamp this in the vise just to keep it flat. Maybe that'll help it stay straighter. Once it's on the guitar, it'll be flat, so it's not a big deal. But I went all the way up the board with the fret rocker. Remember what I said about being pretty good when you tap them in. I got just the slightest little rock right there. Nothing there. So I will go ahead and level these, level crown, all that stuff. And then I'll, once it's on the guitar, I'll level up here. because this isn't flat enough, straight enough, whatever, so I'll have to wait till it's on the guitar to do it. I don't like doing that, I'll admit. But I'll go ahead and I'll round over all my edges and all that, and I'll show you that at some point. I guess that's the next step, actually, so maybe I'll just show you now. Probably never saw anybody level the neck before it's been carved. But, you know, it's straight, so let's go with it. And I will double check it. All right, I made my own triangular file, or not, I didn't make the file, I made the safe edges. And I safe edged 2 of them, and I didn't bother safe edging the 3rd one. So, with the safe edge down, this is something I learned from Frank Ford. Watched a symposium that he was in, and so basically you're just going to come in here and you're going to take a nibble like that. Going to go the other way. Okay, and then with the little StuMac file, you can go down here and catch that corner and get that corner out of there. I like to do this with tape, even though it's a little more difficult to get to that corner. And if I miss one, I'll go back later and get it. But it's just too easy to leave marks on your fretboard with this thing. And I've been very careful about that. Okay, so the other way that I've been doing it is I've just been taking the StuMac file and then just coming down here, doing that bottom corner, getting that out of the way. And then I've been using the rounded side of the file, and I've just been coming back in and just rolling that corner off. Which is essentially what this does. Just bang, bang, right? So by the time you get all of this sanded, it doesn't matter what method you use. Really like it when the neck is out of the guitar so that I can turn it around in the vise like that. All right, now I'm just going to do the rest of this, and I'll bring you back in. All right, got her taped up. Checked my rod, and I might show you. It obviously tails off over here. I'm marking the frets with some black marker. I like the big fat ones. You use them enough, they eventually get a groove in the middle that just rides the fret pretty nicely. Now all of these down here are not going to get touched. I might roll the beam up a little bit to get them just to level them with that in their own little area there. That's not going to take us long because I got 80 grit on this beam. And you know, you just follow the radius with the beam. If you just sand in the middle and you keep sanding in the middle, then you're going to throw the radius off. I do have the 16-inch block, 16-inch radius block that we will be going with as well. So we'll just dust that off. You can see everybody has been touched. And like I said, the radius, if you follow the radius with the beam, if you just hold it in one spot and sand it flat, then you're going to get a flat spot. There's old guys that I've seen videos of that have never used a radius beam in their life, a radius call. They use a flat beam and they follow the radius. Now, if you follow the radius with the center line this way, see, so when you get to the edge, you're not going to be parallel to the edge. You're going to be back like that, or like that rather, because this edge is going to hang over as if it were straight on each side. Okay. If you follow the angle on the board or the string, the way the strings lay, you're going to end up with a conical or compound radius, which isn't the end of the world either, as long as your saddle matches the radius that you're leaving off the end of the fretboard with. But we're not going for that. We're going for a straight up 16-inch cylinder. Okay, so yeah, there. I am going to go ahead, like I said, I'm just going to do a little bit of work right here. Even though that's not flat with the rest of the board, I just wanted to even that section out. All right, so 180, and we're already pretty much cleaned that up. The 80 grit marks, and I am again attempting to stay straight to the center line. I'm just going to come down here and take care of this a little bit. Oh, I'm not taking any off of that guy. So once these are on the guitar, that will make a difference. I'm going to go ahead and roll this. All right, we're golden. Well, this is 320 on here. Let's see if it does anything. You can see here all my radius is intact. It's exactly the same all the way down. So I didn't do any damage with the straight edge beams. I just guaranteed that my entire neck was the same level, which you can't do with a short radius beam. Okay, that's nifty. Let's go ahead and do that again. All right, these are Z files. This is the latest thing that has the 150 grit, so it takes it down faster. This is a 300 grit. We'll start with this just to see if I don't have to take a lot down. I just soon do this now. Am I still in the camera? Yep. You see that very fine black line right down the middle? That's what we're after. So I should go ahead and take a moment to explain that the Z file, I'm not sure you'll be able to see it on that, has a low angle and then a high angle. So it's not an even V, so that when you flip the file over, they're reversed. I used to just use my three-corner file for this because I didn't like the radius ones I bought. I bought a few different styles. Here's the three-corner file, just so I can prove that I can do it. I just run it kind of straight up and down here as you're rocking back and forth. Then I lean it over more as I go. And you can see now that end is pretty good. This end needs a little work. I just like the complete brainlessness of this Z file. All right, so on to this stage. So we got ourselves to 600 on top of the frets. The sides of the frets are going to get sanded along with the top of the frets, but we know we're already at 600, so we don't have to really struggle with that. Did the ends with the files before, and that's all I'm going to do. Just showing you this because you can do this as well. If you don't want to, you still got to do the one where you get down around the edge to get that little bottom corner off of there so you don't catch the edge of your finger on that. That's the sharp part. But you could take your file here, and I'm not going to lean into it far enough to do that. But you could take your crowning file or your Z file like that, and on a Z file you'd have to, flip it and just do that on the ends. And that takes that little corner off that I already nicked off with the bigger file. So when I first started doing this, I will go to this part just because, and just imagine, like 300, 400, 600 and higher wet and dry paper, or the gold stuff you get from StuMac. It's a 3M. But I would take a piece of that and just basically put it in my fingers and then just rub one side of the fret like this, right, all the way up the board, and then I would come back and I'd rub the other side of the fret without hitting the crown, right, staying away from the crown. And that's easier to do with regular sandpaper because this stuff is really spongy. This is super Aslux, by the way. Anyway, and the idea was that if you never touch the crown until the very last, you got all your sanding marks out, everything, then you could come back with like your 1000 or your 1200 and just take the top of the tops off enough to get any of the file marks or sandpaper marks that are left. And I saw this method and I lambasted it, to be quite honest. I thought, this is just, I'm sure I have videos where I said, this is just stupid, don't do this. But you make yourself a block that's padded. It's got corners on it, it's padded. And that is going to ride into and over each fret all the way up and down the fretboard, right? So you do that. Now I'm just doing it slow so you can get the idea of what I'm doing. Okay. And, it finally dawned on me that as long as you do that the same amount on everything, then it's taking everything down the same. So you're not going to lose whatever top you have on your frets. Plus, we're talking 600 grit. Now, this 600 grit Super Aslux cuts at 320, but leaves 600 grit scratches. That's what's amazing about this paper. So, basically, up and down the fretboard. Keep your paper tight. So what you're doing is you're rolling these edges into and over that crown that was that little flat spot. So now you probably don't have a little flat spot anymore. You just have a nice rolled crown over the whole thing, and it works perfectly. If it didn't work as well as the other way, then I wouldn't do it. And then you can take it on and just go over your ends. So now we're getting the ends all rounded in. Remember, we just had a sharp little clip on each of these. Now we're getting to the point where all these little facets are just going into being rounded over. You can see it kind of tears up your paper when you do the ends. So now, and this is a well-used piece, I go through all of them, 600, 800, 1000, and 1200, and 1500. There is another way to do this. If you happen to have an assortment of little rubber sanding blocks like that, I have, different size sanding blocks or round edges and a concave edge, and then just some flat sanding stuff I bought as a kit. And you may have that if you've been trying to sand certain radiuses into things. But anyway, you can see what I've done there. I've just taken the sandpaper and rolled it around that. And so You can essentially do the same thing with that. Actually, that's easier to hold on to, so I may just continue with this instead of the big block. So then I'm going to go over the fret ends. It's 1200. And 15 will be our last. All right, so that should cover me on that stuff. Now I have a wheel buffer, a big buffer, but I'm going to go ahead and do some of this just to show you that you can. And I use this a lot. I don't always go to the big buffer because you know, like I said, I do a lot of refret work, so when I'm refretting, I don't want to go there with the whole guitar. So I'm just going to go ahead and before I get too far, I use the semi-chrome polish for this as well. You can do it by hand, polish it with semi-chrome. I'll put semi-chrome here on the wheel and do the same thing. But I have this great big stick of Blue Rouge. That's for final luster, buffing on gold, silver, sterling, platinum, and other precious metals. And these frets are starting to look precious, so. So you just burn yourself some of that in there. I like to go on the ends. Now this Dremel is spinning this way, so it's pushing down on that. You don't want to do that over here because then it'll be pulling up. So I turn around. Even though these frets are, I'm sure, pretty well seated, I don't want to take a chance on pulling a fret out with this. As I'm putting my fingers on these frets, these are not hot enough to melt any CA glue or anything else you might have set them in. I also hear a lot of people talking about that, like you can't use that on your frets, a Dremel, because it'll soften the glue up. So, no it won't, unless you get crazy, I guess. All right, so there's those first 5. I'm just going to go over to the wheel because I have it. Okay, so at this point, I'm going to clean up any super glue I see and then oil the fretboard. I'm just going to go ahead and do this. Razor blade. Like I said, I just like to scrape these edges of these fingerboard off, fretboard, so that it's so that it doesn't have a sharp edge on it. I don't like to go too crazy. I don't want it to feel like it's worn out, but I want it to be comfortable to play. I am using the Stumac fretboard oil. I think that's what they call it. Yep, finishing oil, excuse me. And you could also use orange oil and beeswax. I've used that. It's a good product for, you know, nourishing fretboards. Again, I like to rub it you know, parallel to the frets so that I don't push a lot of the product under the fret. Like I said, I do fret jobs, fret replacement, you know, refrets. Just learn how to say the word, Dane. Refrets. And what happens is, you know, you'll get frets that are like just kind of falling out of a guitar because they've had so much conditioner pushed under the fret, and that it soaks down into the actual slot, and then you end up with green slime and loose frets. We'll let that soak in a bit. We'll wipe it down, and that's going to be it for this video. Well, while it's nice and wet here, I don't know if I can do a slow-mo. I didn't put it on the side here, but I could just so you can see that. Of course, I still have to carve the neck, all that good stuff. I want you to see the side dot markers. Anyway, I'll get to those. So, here are the frets and the inlays and the wingay fretboard, and then the side markers. James, if you tell me my double's at 9, I'm gonna give up. Anyway. Yeah, oh, and the fret ends. I don't know how clearly you can see those in there, but they're pretty nice. There's nothing catching me anywhere, so it's nice and comfortable. So I think that's it. Been rambling on for a while now. Let's just give up. See you, folks. Thanks for watching. Hit like and subscribe. Tell all your friends. Write mom. You know, all that stuff. Thanks, folks.